Global Head of Customer Experience for Canva, Sasha Anderson.
Good morning. Can we give another round of applause for Dan? He did an amazing job. All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Sasha Anderson. I'm the Global Head of Customer Experience at a company called Canva. Who here has heard of Canva? Okay, great to hear. So Canva, the first 10 years of Canva were all about empowering every user to design. And the next 10 years are all about empowering every business to design. And so I'm responsible for the B2B post-sales organization, so professional services, CSM, technical account management, all that fun stuff. And I'm super excited to be here today. Prior to Canva, I was at a company called Procore, and we scaled that company up from about 20 million or so in revenue up to about 1.5 billion, which was super fun. Had a lot of different roles there, and so I love to build things. And so I'm at Canva to build. And so today, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. It's actually going to build on a lot of what Dan just ran through, which is great. We're going to talk about CX as a revenue function, the maturity journey and how that's changed over the past few years. We're going to talk about PLG and SLG because Canva is a PLG company and an SLG company. And so how do we bring those two motions together? How do we think about a funnel in CX? A couple other frameworks. And then what does our operating cadence look like at Canva? Okay, so I want everyone to raise their hands here if they report into the CRO or a CRO type function. Okay, not a ton of people. What about into CEO or COO? Okay, a lot more folks. And so, there's been this kind of evolution of CS in a lot of different ways, and we're starting to see CX report more into the CRO, more into a revenue type function. And for those folks that report into that function or just want to be more relevant to that function, that's what we're going to run through today. And so I like to think of CS as not just a relationship function, it's a performance function, which means it's measured, it's forecasted, and it's managed. And I've found that it's really important to run this overall function as a metric-driven, outcome-driven organization to get a seat at the table and to be taken seriously by your board, your C-suite executives. You might be one of those really lucky people that reports into a CEO or a CRO or a CRO, and they just know CS is super important, and you don't have to justify your investment, and they just know you're running a great organization, and you don't feel like you have a ton of scrutiny. That is not the case for most people. And so we're going to run through what has been the evolution of CS over the past, call it 15 years or so. How has it evolved? And then also, how has the reporting structure evolved as well? And how has that changed what we care about in a lot of different ways? And so, flashback, 2008, 2010, I think Salesforce was actually the first company that really defined CSM. I think they were selling a massive, massive customer and sitting down with them about to sign the dotted line, and the customer asked, well, who's the person that's going to make sure I'm really successful at the end of the day? Do you guys have anybody like that? I know you have your support function. You have this account executive that sold me a ton of software, but who's that trusted advisor that's going to take me through the journey and not ask me for a ton of money all the time? And they didn't really have anybody, but they created the CSM role. And that was way back 15 years ago, and that was more of a reactive kind of support adjacent type function. We were still figuring out what CS was, often reporting into the CEO at that point in time. A lot of people just thought of it as support, pretty much, an extended version of support. And then around 2014, 2015, we started to see more tech become available, CS-specific tech. We hadn't really had that before. You started seeing CSPs come on the market and other types of tech. We started doing health scoring. We hadn't really done that before. We started standardizing a lot more across CS. And it became a function that most SaaS companies, most tech companies had a CS function. And especially 2015 to 2020, we saw a lot of investment poured into the CS organization. And we started to see that organization become a lot more proactive than it had been historically. We had health scoring so we could kind of reach out to customers if we thought they weren't on track. We weren't just looking based on renewal date. We started to see the advent of the CRO role happen in this time frame. It started to become a more common org structure where you had a chief revenue officer who had sales, but they also had operations, but they also started to have CS as well. And that's not true across the board, but we're starting to see that become a more common org reporting structure. And so we started to see CS inch a little bit more towards revenue and a little bit further away from what we would think of as support. And now we're in 2024, 2025, and essentially everything has changed in the sense of now we have this kind of AI first motion that's possible. And the biggest thing that's different is if you look back 10 years ago, there were scaled motions. There were digital motions, but they didn't really feel personalized. And now you start talking to companies and they're putting customers that pay you $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year through their digital motion. And the reason they're able to do that is because it feels personalized, and it hasn't felt personalized historically. And so we're really at this kind of forefront of a really, really big shift in CS, and that's what Dan just said as well. And so with this advent of tech as well, we're seeing a lot more AI-first tech that tells you what to do. It's not just about, let me put my playbook into the CSP. It's, this technology is gonna analyze everything about my customers from a product perspective, from what we're putting into the CRM, and it's actually gonna recommend actions for me instead of us having to go in and create all those playbooks. So it's a really exciting time to be in CX, and we're really moving into this more kind of predictive type model. And it's really on all of us as executive leaders to run the CX function from an outcome-based perspective, from a metric-based perspective, so we can continue to get investment in this function go forward. So at Canva, we have a PLG motion, actually a massive PLG motion. Canva has 220 million monthly active users that use the platform every single month. And then we also have this, what we call our sales-led motion as well. And that's in the early innings. And a ton of companies have tried to do PLG to SLG, and most of them have failed. But Canva, I think, is really uniquely positioned to win in this market. And I'm gonna walk y'all through the different operating cadences we run at an executive level all the way to an individual level. And the intent is to get CX a seat at the table. And that helps us get more investment, and it helps us also attract the right type of talent into the organization as well. And so for us, how do you manage online and offline businesses? Most companies just do it completely separate, actually, and there's no overlap. But for us, we care about wherever the customer enters this journey, whether they come in from the online side and they go onto the offline side. Hopefully they don't come onto the offline side and go onto the online side, but it does happen occasionally. And so what we do is we run an executive level operating cadence every 2 weeks. It's all about leading indicators. This is not a lagging indicator meeting. We have our forecast meeting every single week with our executive team. And this is a cross-functional group of folks in product, our CMO, folks in sales, folks in CS, folks in operations and strategy. And what we're looking at is across the online business and the offline business, how are our leading indicators tracking? How's activation going? How's adoption going? But more importantly, we take it down another level and we say, we know it's really important for Canva that a customer needs to set up their brand kit in the first 10 days of signing up, whether they're online or whether they're offline. How's that going? And the really cool thing about this type of cadence is the online team might notice, it's so weird, setup just isn't happening by month 3, and we know a customer needs to be fully set up by month 3. And what ends up happening is they do something in the product to actually drive setup up, but we work on that with them. And so all of a sudden we're providing a cohesive experience for our customers in product, across online and across offline. And so the whole intent of this is, as a business, with our C-suite, we're looking at the leading indicators of the business for online, offline. We're putting together action plans for when things aren't tracking, but most importantly, we're actually catching problems before they happen, because we're not looking and saying, how did retention go? We care about that. We want to catch it like 9 months ahead of that, and this is the forum for us to do this. And it also allows us to really elevate CX in general. It elevates us as a function. The entire right-hand side of this, what we call the bow tie, is post-sales. And our entire executive team cares a lot about post-sales. And this is a forum where we can really elevate the voice, really elevate the things we need to drive a great post-sales experience. And so the first cadence we start with to really manage the business is this executive level leading indicator, what we call the bow tie. And then we take it down to the teams too. And so I've worked for a lot of different CROs historically, and I've found that they care a lot if you can speak their language. And for a CRO, when they think about sales, their language is, how many leads do we have? Did we get enough pipeline? Did that pipeline convert? How'd the pipeline move down the funnel? Do I need to adjust my close rate? Do I need to adjust the volume of leads coming in? What are my levers to pull? We don't really necessarily do that unilaterally across CX, but we can. And so the conversation I have with my CRO every other week is against this funnel for my entire book of business. And I'm letting him know, people are getting stuck in this part of the funnel, and here are the things that I'm doing. And so what we've done for us is we've looked really deeply in our product, and we know and we understand exactly what needs to happen for a customer to get to the revenue outcome. Because at the end of the day, my CRO cares about the revenue outcome. He actually cares zero about whether or not we set up the account right, but what he cares about is, are we going to be able to drive high net dollar retention from this account? And so for us, what we've been able to find is if we set up an account really well, we have 5 things at Canva that we know means great account setup, then they're twice as likely to get activated. For us, activation is they logged into the product and they're doing something in the product. We want to exit with 80% of folks activated by the time they're done with implementation. Then we look at utilization. And within utilization, we're not just looking at, are they using the product? We're actually looking at what's the depth of their usage in the product. And so we look at 2 things there. We're looking at collaboration. So for Canva, that means you're in the product, you're doing something, but are you sharing that work with other people? Are you actually collaborating across the different document types, or are you just in the product doing something? Collaboration is a really important metric for us. And the next thing we look at is if you're using and you're collaborating, are you actually engaged or not? And engaged for us is how frequently are you collaborating and how frequently are you using? And we know if we can get an account to engagement, they're going to have 3 times higher NDR. So for us, that's over 150% NDR. And so the entire thing I'm driving with my team is how can we focus on these leading indicators? Because the outcome matters, but how are we actually going to get to the outcome? And so I found breaking it down for them this way is really easy for them to understand. And then breaking it down for my CRO this way is really easy for him to understand. Because this is the language he is used to speaking, which is, do I have enough leads? Is it converting to pipeline? Do I need to move up my quantity, or do I need to move up my quality? And so this is how we run our business at Canva from a funnel perspective. All that data doesn't really mean a ton if you don't do anything with it. And so for us, we think that post-sales orchestration, the way that we orchestrate our post-sales motion, is more important than pre-sales. Because you can do a great job in pre-sales, but if we don't orchestrate it awesome in post-sales, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And so we've looked really closely into our product, and we know if you don't set up your template by this date, if you set up your groups by this date, your folders by this date, if you don't have this many types of folders, if you're not using this many types of documents, all these different things in the product, we know you're not going to be as successful. And so we've gotten really, really prescriptive with the actual data. That data then drives signals for us. And it's not just healthy customer, unhealthy customer. Not to say that's not helpful, it is helpful, but your customer could look healthy, but maybe they're not actually doing a couple of the attributes that you know are really important. And so you know they might look healthy now, but they're not doing these 2 or 3 things in the product that are really important. So they're actually probably not going to be healthy in 2 or 3 months. How do I get ahead of it? This is all about getting ahead, further and further and further ahead, where all of a sudden you can spot risk or expansion 9 to 10 months before the customer even is thinking about either of those different things. And so for us, our framework is, what's the data? What's the actual signal? What are we having? What's the action we're having the team take? And then what's the outcome that's actually driving for us? And so action is each of these different signals that we have in the product. It's either going to map to a scaled campaign. It could be something as simple as send them this content. It could be something as simple as this, you're now being reached out to with a Zoom link because we think we need to drive this specific feature with you. And it really allows us to move from, all right, let's look at your next quarter renewals and tell me about them. Let's look at 6 months out. Tell me about your renewals. And it lets us move to, let's look at the trajectory of your accounts. Let's talk about all your accounts that are stuck in the activation phase and they haven't been activated. Let's focus on that. And then what we can do is we can take all that information and it informs our enablement programs as well. And so we might say, So weird, you know? We're able to get people using, but we just can't get them collaborating at scale for some reason. And I thought it was just a problem with my EMEA team, but actually it's a global problem. Now all of a sudden we're coming in with enablement, and the thing that we're targeting is how are we increasing collaboration? And then we can test and see whether or not that works. And so this is the framework that we use with the team to really drive them to outcome. And so what you're gonna notice is we care a ton about outputs, we care a ton about outcome metrics. Your board cares about that, your CEO cares about that, certainly your CRO cares about that. But at the end of the day, inputs are the levers to actually get us to the outputs. And so we focus disproportionately on the input metrics to get us to those outcome metrics. So how do we bring this all together? What I've found is you might already be doing all these things, which is great. But if you can't communicate it really, really well, all the way up the chain in a way that's really easy to understand, in a language that is really easy to understand for your C-suite executives, for your board, for your peers, all of a sudden, it almost becomes this topic of, not exactly sure what they're doing over there, but do they really need more headcount? Do they really need this technology they're asking for? I'm not exactly sure what outcomes they're driving. You know, retention seems like it's going down slightly, but they don't seem to have a grasp on the top of their funnel. And so bringing it all together is, yes, looking at this executive type operating cadence and bringing it down, but how do you communicate it? And how do you make sure everybody knows exactly what you're working on, exactly where customers are in your funnel, and exactly what you're doing about it? And so for us, yes, we have an executive forecast review every single week. We're talking about churn 6 months out. Pretty much everybody does that. It's nothing crazy. We're also looking at the health of the funnel in that meeting. And so I'm coming into that meeting and I'm saying, I'm looking at all of Q3, I'm looking at all of Q4, and here's where I'm noticing folks are stuck. And here's exactly what we're doing about it. And I'll report back to you in 2 weeks about whether or not that changed the outcome or not. And we're speaking in revenue terms too. We're saying, hey, average utilization for next quarter is about 76%. I know if I can get it up to 80%, I'm gonna be able to mitigate this much churn and drive this much more expansion revenue for the business. Hold me accountable to that. And in this review, I'm also talking about top 10 deals, top 10 accounts, where we are with them. So it's a very sales rigor-like kind of discipline. And the reason I do that is because that really seems to be what resonates all the way to the top, because that's what the board's used to seeing at the end of the day. Then we go to the executive metric review. We just talked about this. That's a leading indicator review, though. We spend plenty of time in our forecast review around what's happening in the next couple of quarters. The executive metric review is that bow tie I showed you. What's happening from a leading perspective in online and in offline, because what we do in online is going to impact what we do in offline as well. Individual forecast reviews, we do this every single week with our team. Implementation review. So I'm looking every single week at all the accounts that entered implementation, what's our plan for those accounts, all the accounts that are exiting implementation, and I'm managing all that information over to my sales counterparts as well. So there's no question for them about what's going on. Do we have capacity constraints? It's a great opportunity for me to say, hey, you thought this was a great customer, but actually you promised them 6 months of custom work, and it's taking away from these other product things we want to work with. And so it's a really great check and balance to hold the sales team accountable for what actually got passed over the fence from an implementation perspective. And then finally, we're ending every other week. So with the individuals, every week, we're looking at their forecast. Every other week, we're looking at their entire funnel, and we're understanding account by account, where are they getting stuck, and what are the different plays we're going to use. And we have plays against these things, but we're learning something new every single day, right? And so when we can sit down with the individuals, and they can say, you know, I noticed this account wasn't engaged, and I actually tried this thing, and it actually worked. Then all of a sudden, we can standardize that and roll that out across the rest of the team. And so the team feels really bought in to the playbooks, really bought into the standardization. It's not just something that's coming top down. It's something we're actually managing bottoms up with them as well. So overall, the way that I see it is CS is a revenue team, but only if it acts like one. And it's really on all of us as executives to tell that story to everyone above us, which is, this is a revenue team. These are the outcomes that we're driving. This is what happens if we don't drive these outcomes. And this is what happens if we drive these outcomes really well. And that's how we get better investment on a people perspective. It's how we get better investment from a tech perspective. It's also how we get a seat at the table. It's how you get into those meetings with product and they sit down and they say, oh, you know, I was thinking about building this, but I thought I should check with you first. because I have a lot of confidence in how you're running your business. And because I have a lot of confidence in how you're running your business, I want to get you involved. It's how you get involved in the sales deals earlier in the process as well. It becomes less of a, I just threw this over the fence and figure out how to make them successful. We've all been there at some point in time. And it becomes a lot more of, I should probably bring my CX leader in, stage 2, stage 3, help me scope this account, help me make sure this is actually a good account for the company, because I'm really confident in how they're running their business. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you having me. Can I answer any questions for anyone? Let's do it.
Thanks for the presentation. I think every one of us would like to be predictive.
Yes.
And the problem is we all lack that fundamental visibility into these leading indicators. For example, you have a really nice signal of like, hey, this company hasn't used shared folders for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't even have that type of data. Often it's in product. And product never seems to think that, hey, we should be tracking that stuff.
Yeah.
How were you able to convince product?
Yeah.
Okay, like we need this type of analytics
Yeah.
specifically for customer success?
It's a great question. It's one of the first things I did when I joined Canva. I showed them the impact of not having that data. I didn't show them the impact of not having that data at the company I was at, but I showed them the impact at a prior company. I said, hey, this is what our retention and our expansion looked like before we were able to have this really specific product data. Flashback 9 months forward, this is the data we were able to add, and this is how we move these metrics. And so you could actually help me move these revenue metrics. And also, what I found with product too is I don't try and boil the ocean with them. I try and say, could I have these 5 things? Give me these 5 things. Let's see what I can do with these 5 things. If I can do something really special with it, awesome. But I don't ask them for 25 things at once because they'll never give it to us. We also have a data team that helps sit between product and between our revenue teams as well. But I think with all of this, it's show the impact. And I think, especially for me, I used to get really paralyzed in a lot of ways. I'm like, I need all this data. I need to tell the perfect story. It needs to be right to like 0.000%. And now I'm a lot more comfortable saying, generally speaking, in my experience, I've seen, here's some examples, but it doesn't need to be so specific. It can just, I make sure it's directionally what I've seen in the past, and it's showing them that it'll help drive the outcome. And I worry less about spending 10 plus hours on the data analysis itself.
Utilization metrics to revenue numbers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for us, it's what we do is we pull all the way through, right? So it's like utilization, collaboration, engagement. And what we did is we pulled all of the customers we had, and we looked at all those different metrics, and we looked at what their actual retention outcomes were and what their actual expansion outcomes were. And then we cohorted all that data, and we brought it all together, and we generalized it. So my slide was generalized, right? It's like 3 times higher NDR if you're engaged. It's probably like 3.47 times more likely or something like that. But we actually pulled all the different customers. So for B2B, it was maybe 10,000 customers we looked at for B2B, every single piece. And our data team actually did that for us in SQL. Yeah. We're a little bit blessed at Canva because we have this PLG motion, and PLG companies care a lot about data, and they care a lot about product data too. And so they're very invested as well in like bringing that over to our side of the house.
Working with so many customers, like you said, millions of customers, a lot of us are working at companies where we're trying to scale.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have maybe that many, but
Yeah.
we're trying to scale. Looking at your tech stack, like your providers, can you just name like one piece of tech that you felt has been really helpful?
Yeah.
In helping you scale?
Okay, I'm not sure if I'll give you a couple. So I'll actually say a couple things. The first thing I would say is when I joined Canva, we only had Salesforce. So we didn't have any of this. So we were like doing all of our analysis in Excel. All of our triggers were based off of data in Salesforce and just create tasks. So it was nothing crazy. What I will say now is we are currently evaluating 3 different CSP platforms, but I actually think tech doesn't, we know this because a lot of us sell technology, tech is not going to solve the process problems. And so when I came in at Canva, the first thing I did was, okay, what should the processes look like? And like, what should the playbooks look like? And I should have all that information ready before I actually think about the tech that I want to overlay on top of it. Because I've made the mistake before where I bought tech, it didn't work because I didn't have the processes in place. And then all of a sudden, I was 6 months into the deployment, I totally bombed the launch because we didn't have all the stuff we needed in it. So for us, it was like mapping out what do we think it should look like? What are the playbooks? What can I do in Salesforce for now? And then currently evaluating CSP platforms. I do think the CSP landscape has evolved a ton in the past 6 months. I think AI native, AI first is happening in a lot of different places. And so I think the landscape has shifted really fundamentally the last 6 months. I think it's going to shift even more in the next 6 months, and so it's something we're really closely watching, and it's actually a reason why another reason we didn't get it at the beginning of when I joined Canva is because I think the landscape is shifting so quickly right now. But we use all the tech you would expect, SalesLoft, Zendesk, we use Gong, for our call recording, all kind of your typical sales tech stack as well.
You and Dan both talked about having weekly forecasts.
Mhm.
But your product, somebody could stop using your product tomorrow.
Yep,
They don't have to have a replacement.
they sure don't.
So for our product, it's an accounting product, and it's an accounting system.
Mhm.
So a customer can't leave, just say, yeah, we're not going to use it.
That's awesome.
They don't have it.
Yeah.
So I know in my mind, it takes them 3 to 6 months to get implemented on a new accounting system. Okay? So how often would those forecast meetings really take place? Because weekly would kind of be redundant in our situation, do the same thing.
How many customers is the team managing on average?
Well, overall, our customers, we have over 1,000 customers, probably 1,100. However, we have over 8,500 hotels. So each hotel uses the product.
Yeah, I mean, I would say bi-weekly to at least talk about the customers is something that should be happening regardless. Even if if I go into my forecast call and something's changing every single week, I'm definitely doing something wrong. My goal with my forecast meeting is I'm calling a number at the beginning of the quarter, and I want it to be within plus or 5% at the end of the quarter. And so if it's moving every single week, I'm doing a really, really bad job. And so even though it's not moving every single week, I like to think part of the reason it's not moving every single week is because we have that operational rigor and we're looking at it every week and we're really tight on it, versus if we were to extend that time frame, I think it would move a lot more.
I would love to hear a little bit more about how you're balancing the prep for all of those different meetings you're doing internally with actually meeting with your team or even meeting with your customer base and
Yeah.
how to inform the numbers. You
Yeah.
have to have the context of the narrative behind it.
Yeah.
So how do you balance those two?
Totally. Haven't nailed it is the first thing I would say. What I try and do with my schedule, which like I said, I haven't nailed, is I try and have different focuses, different days, which is hard with customer calls. But for like team meetings as example, I have all my one-on-ones and all of my team meetings on one day. And that is just like, that's like my people day. And then my kind of like operating type cadences, those are usually over the balance of 2 days. And then customer meetings are whenever the customer wants to meet essentially. But I try and tranche out my days. I don't have a massive team. There's, I don't know, maybe 80 or 90 folks on the CX side. And so what I do is every quarter, I'm going to meet with every single individual on the team. And so every quarter, I'm meeting with every single person for 30 minutes. And then every month, I'm meeting with 2 levels down. And then every week, I'm meeting with my direct reports, pretty much, just to try and make sure we're having that interaction. I do an all hands every quarter, just like, here's what you should be excited about. Every 2 weeks, I post an update to my team about what's going on and what the priorities are as well. Okay. Anything else? All right, let's do it.
It's on? Okay. It's piggybacking on one of the questions that was previously asked. So I heard you say that one of your like aha moments for making sure your clients are staying is the 10-day brand kit. Like within 10 days, they have to set this up. How
Yep.
do you come up with that aha moment? That seems very simple.
Yeah, So what we pretty much do is we pull in all of our product data on a per customer basis. And so I'm looking at utilization, collaboration, engagement, activation, and then I'm also pulling in all the different product level data as well. In terms of how do we determine like what that aha moment was, I leaned on the data and the product teams for that. Luckily for us with the PLG motion, we kind of have a sense we want them to generally do these things, and we've been able to bring that over to the SLG motion as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everybody. Have a good